All right, guys, welcome back to the MVM Show. I'm Tice, your host, here with Jimmy Muller again with Muller Choke Tubes, and we're excited to talk a lot of stuff, questions, kind of a Q&A session. Just a reminder, if you guys want to buy choke or you've been thinking about buying these chokes, you want to try them, there's a 60-day money-back guarantee from the time you pull the trigger, as he always says. Even if it's 2 months later during duck season and you bought it now, definitely guarantees it, because I'm guaranteeing you probably won't send it back. So, but anyways, if you want 10% off on his chokes, you put in at checkout MVM 2024, all caps, all one word, and you'll get 10% off. So thank you for joining us again. Welcome back, Jimmy. We're going to jump right into this. So my first question from your Facebook page. So you have some Facebook pages. You can, the fan club page, you also got Muller Choke Tubes, you also got your personal Jimmy Muller on Facebook and your website. But one thing I seen you doing a video, and I thought that's actually a good point, because it ain't the first time that I've seen that question pop up. And I think I even asked you when I first got it. Explain and talk to us about the gap with the chokes, the little gap.
Oh, so very
easy
important
question, but
yeah, but thanks for bringing that up, because a lot of people do ask. I take it for granted just because, I'm a machinist and I make the chokes, right? So the gap Titus is talking about is all the chokes we make are extended chokes. So, you've got an extended head that sticks above the barrel, and where the head of the choke starts to the end of the barrel, the face of the muzzle, I teach people there always needs to be a gap. And that gap may be as small as a few thousandths of an inch, which would be pretty much unnoticeable with the naked eye, all the way up to an eighth of an inch, which is pretty significant. And the reason that it can be that significant of a difference is because barrels have tolerances in the industry. Okay, so all of the chokes that we make are always within a thousandth of an inch. Okay, one hair on your head is 3/1000ths of an inch in diameter. So when I say, 1/1000th of an inch, it's like taking a hair on your head and slicing it 3 times, and that's 1/1000th of an inch. Okay, so 1/1000th of an inch total tolerance on all of our chokes, on all of our dimensions. And what happens is, in barrel tolerances out there in the industry, obviously the tolerances don't need to be anywhere near that tight. So you will get certain barrels that are a lot deeper in the choke area or shallower. And the last thing you want to do is have an extended choke tube bottom out on the head, on the face of the muzzle. And the reason for that is the face of most barrels are not square to the rest of the bore. Now, obviously, the bore of the shotgun barrel is just like a rifle bore. That's where the bullet comes down and travels down and then exits. If the choke tube is not sitting square to the bore, the shot is going to come out going the wrong direction, and your point of impact is going to be off, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, the further you shoot, that accumulative error gets a lot worse. So I've seen it as bad as, 10 inches at 20 yards. Okay. So it's significant. Imagine that at 40 yards.
Yeah.
So
right.
Don't plan on hitting anything. So it's very important that we have a gap between the head of the choke and the end of the barrel. And again, it may be a very small amount that's almost not visible with the naked eye, or it may be pretty significant, like an eighth of an inch, anywhere in between. Yes, it's good to have the gap. You need to have the gap, and it's okay if it looks a little big, as long as you know the choke's seated at the bottom. If you're cranking on a tight, if you're cranking on a tight choke and it's getting tighter and tighter, and all of a sudden you get down to the bottom, you're like, well, I think it's all the way down. No, that's not okay. But if it spins in or turns in the way it's supposed to, and you feel it hit the bottom and there's a gap, doesn't matter how big or small, as long as there's a gap.
Okay. And your chokes just hand tight, right?
Yeah. I mean, so that's a good question too, Titus, because that's all relative, right? So if you have a choke tube that's 2-inch extension and you're a big, strong guy and you put grease on a choke and you lock that thing in, I'm not going to be able to take it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's tight. But if you have a choke that's only sticking out 3/4 of an inch and you've got an over and under where both chokes are right next to each other and all you could do is this, that's not tight. Okay.
Oh.
So there's different definitions of hand tight on a choke tube. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I bring this up is when we're hunting in most places in the USA, we're not shooting enough to where the choke is going to loosen a lot in a hunting scenario, unless we're blasting a lot of snow geese or whatever, right? The reason I bring that up is if you're in a sporting clay tournament or practice and you're shooting, 100 shots in 20 minutes, it's going to be a lot more prone to loosening, right?
Yep.
Which is the reason that I sell a choke tube wrench that's universal for all chokes. And you screw the choke in, you lock it, it's not going to loosen. Okay.
Right.
And then you unlock it when you want to take it out and you spin it out quick and it's nice and easy. Do you need a choke wrench? No, you don't need one. Should you have one and should you use one? Yes, you should.
Okay.
So that's what I tell people. You don't need to buy it. I don't want to push it on you, but I would never be caught without a choke wrench in my pocket or my shell bag ever. Doesn't matter if I'm hunting or shooting clays. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, I want to be able to take choke in and out very easily without having to do this all day long. Also, I don't want it to loosen while I'm shooting. And also, if a choke, let's say I put a choke in last time I was out, I take the gun out of my gun sleeve or gun case when I get to where I'm going. Oh gosh, I don't want that choke in for what I'm doing. Uh-oh, I can't get it out of my fingers. Well, guess what? I'm stuck shooting that choke, regardless of what it is. Yeah. So I've been in all those scenarios. I don't like it, so I use a choke wrench.
Okay.
The choke wrench that I invented and machined myself, it's all USA made. It's fully rust proof, even in salt water. It's as strong as it can be. Everything is custom made and molded for me in the USA, and then I machine everything. So my choke wrenches work with any choke, whether it's a flush mount factory choke, an extended factory choke, other companies' chokes, my chokes. It works with everything. Yeah. And we have them in 20 gauge, also 12 gauge, 10 gauge. Okay. The 12 gauge works in 10 gauge. So.
Okay. No, I love it. That's an ingenious design. I love it though. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And I have some other ones. We'll see. I'll talk to you later about some of these other questions because I feel like 2 of these are going to be a whole episode. But let me ask you these simpler ones first, and depending on what time we have. So I'm going to read you this. I already texted you this yesterday. I feel like this is going to be a lengthy one. So I text you a screenshot of this comment yesterday, and I'm going to read it to you, and I'd like to have you. So I did a pattern test on my 28 gauge with my factory choke, okay, because I wanted to make those separate videos. And then the next one's going to be with your choke, and it's going to be the passing as of right now, because here pretty soon you're going to have the decoy choke, right, for the 28 gauge.
Yeah. Yep, we're going to have decoy passing and UFO.
Okay, and I have the passing and the UFO for my Benelli Ethos Cordoba 28 gauge. But in this video, and he's the second guy said it, and it's not going to be the last people that say it, and it always cracks me up. And I hate to say this, guys, but some of the questions I just don't feel like answering them because they're not worth my time. But because we're on a audio deal platform here, and it's legit that I'm sure people wonder. I'm going to read what he says. He said, why in the blankety blank shoot the same piece of paper 4 times? It tells you absolutely nothing, which, boy, that's a bold statement, which is totally wrong. It tells you absolutely nothing about the single shot pellet density. I've done hundreds of pattern tests. The best way is to just shoot 1 shell at a piece of paper. Well,
All right. So here's the deal with that. So I too have done many hundreds of patterns. And what I learned, because my time is priceless, right? If I shoot one shot, and we touched on this on the last podcast a little bit in a different way, without realizing I was answering this. So because there's so much deviation, shell to shell, shot to shot, just the ammo alone, regardless of whose it is, because you're applying physics on many BBs, right? You're not shooting a single projectile. Physics, air resistance, all these things are placed upon each individual BB. Every shot is going to be somewhat different. Somewhat may mean a little different, somewhat may mean very different, right? So if you take one shotgun shell through one choke and one gun and you shoot one piece of paper at a certain distance, it tells you very little. Never mind the whole paper thing being one dimensional, two dimensional if you want to argue about it. But what it tells you is pretty much nothing, because you've only fired one shot and you have no idea what forces were applied upon each BB in that shotgun shell before it got to the paper. And you don't even know what it looked like when it got to the paper. So the reason that I personally explain to people to fire more than one shot at a piece of paper when you're trying to think about your pattern efficiency is because of this. If you fire 25 shots at 25 different pieces of paper, none of them are going to look the same. So if you fire just one shot arbitrarily, you don't know much of anything on what you're getting. So the reason that I draw a dot and I fire a minimum of 4 or 5 rounds at that dot, and then I draw my circle, and then I do my pellet count, and then I know how many pellets are in that shot shell, and then I divide by the amount of shots I fired, it is going to give me, based on variation and based on a cumulative error, it's going to give me a much more accurate number than if I just fired a single shot. Now, you could argue with me or not agree with me, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But I have literally done it 12,000 times, okay? Minimum. I've done it 12,000 times back then when I developed my chokes for all the different guns and all the different ammos, creating the gun-specific patterning geometry for each gun. I've done it even more since then, okay? So I haven't done it hundreds of times. I've done it tens of thousands of times. And this is what I've learned. So if you want to shoot one shot arbitrarily using one ammo with one choke at a piece of paper at one distance and think that you know what you're getting out there, you go for it. But you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, too, it's just like I said, sometimes people comment when they watch a quarter of the video and don't even watch the rest of it. But it's like I'm showing every single shot what it looks like individually, just stacking on top. You know, it's like, anyways, it doesn't matter. It's just, I know a few people ask that every time you do one of those pattern videos. They just can't get over that.
You know what? I mean, listen, it's a logical question. If you don't know what I explained, nobody that patterns shoots more than one shot. They may shoot a lot of different shots. But here's what I've learned over all these years with all my students, with all my friends, with all the people in the industry I've shot with and I've pattern tested with and watched them pattern test, and they've sent me pictures of their patterns. I'm talking like, huge, right? Most people will load a shell into a gun with a given choke, with a given ammo. They will shoot the paper at a given distance. They will go look at it and say, oh, okay, that's what I get. No, you have no idea what you're going to get next shot or 5 shots from now, or the next 25 shots using the same combination. You have no idea. And furthermore, like we talked about in the last podcast, Titus, you don't know what that is going to give you out there on the target
in the
in
field.
regards to shot string length, pattern
Mhm.
efficiency, shot-to-shot deviation. How did each pellet get to that point of impact? You don't know any of it. So really, man, just it's hard. It's hard because people don't have really any other way to pattern test other than shoot a piece of paper, which is why I went through all of the trouble of what I've done and struggled through and paid to do with my time and money to try to do everything I could imaginable to save people all of that pain.
Right.
I've
Yeah.
done it. And
Yeah.
again, going back to the warranty I offer, that's why I offer it. I want people to understand why I'm recommending what I do based on true results
Well,
of
that's the thing
what
is
I've known.
nobody offers a warranty unless they absolutely have 100% trust in their product.
Yes. Yes.
And that's why when you see a guarantee like that, you rarely see those period anymore. But when you do see them, instantly that builds trust before you ever touch the product.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
I want people, I've told, I used to have sponsored shooters. I used to have all these different people shooting my chokes, and certain people would, want me to pay them. And basically what I would tell them, I was honest because, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I have to be true to who I am. I tell them, and this goes for people that call me and are like, "Hey man, if you send me chokes, I'll promote your product." I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, you won't." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I will send you chokes, but I want you to shoot them. I want you to hunt with them. I want you to shoot cripples with them. I want you to shoot birds on the water with them. I want you to use them for a long time. And if you truly feel that they are the best you've ever used, then I want you to talk to me about putting you on pro staff or sponsoring back in the day or whatever." And the reason for that is because I know that my products are what they are because of what I put into them. I do not want you using my product if you don't truly think they are the best or that they are helping you in a certain way. If you don't feel that they're benefiting you, I don't want you using them because I would rather give you your money back and have you go shoot something else that you think you're more confident with or you like better than being stuck with something that I've made, that I've put my hard-earned money and testing and my experience into for it to help you. If you don't think it's helping you, I don't want you to be stuck with it.
Yeah.
I don't want the money, and I
Right.
want you to be happy.
Right. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with it, and I appreciate that. Okay, so this is definitely, I already know, is going to take us probably till the end, I would think. I'm going to save, I have some shimming questions for you, but I want to ask you, you mentioned something to me when we were on the phone about point of impact and why 50-50, 60-40, 70-30. How do we break that down?
Yeah.
How
So
do we just talk about point of impact, or do we go, well, I guess that goes together, but why would you want certain ones? What do you like? I mean, just, this
yeah,
is a kind of broad.
let's talk about quickly point of impact in general. How do we know what the true point of impact is on our shotgun, and how do we know that it's good? Okay. So here's something that's really important for people to do when they're checking point of impact. Number one, take the choke tube out of your gun, shoot threads. No, that will never damage your threads. That's a myth. Okay. Take the choke tube out of your gun, bench rest it like a rifle. 20 yards is a good distance because you have no choke in the gun. Okay. Bench rest it, aim at the dot on the paper, and shoot 5 shots. Again, we go back to more than one because human error, right? We might pull a shot, we might screw up, we might lift our head, we might fall off the sandbag, the target may have moved. We never fire one shot anytime we're doing any type of shotgun pattern testing, okay? Take the choke tube out of your gun, set up a big piece of paper, 20 yards, draw a dot in the center of it, bench rest it, fire 5 shots at the dot, and then go look at where your pattern center point of impact is. That will tell you that your barrel point of impact is good or bad. It will tell you where the gun is shooting without human error, okay? Once you establish where that point of impact is, whether it's good or bad, establish where it is, then put the choke tube of choice in the barrel, repeat the same exact process, and the pattern, of course, it's going to be tighter if you put a choke in, but the center of it, whether it's this big or this big, center is center. The center of the pattern should be in the exact same spot. If it is not in the same spot, it means that the choke tube is not square or cylindrical, or something is wrong with the choke tube influencing your shot pattern point of impact. The reason I bring this up, it's so critically important for you to understand this, because there are a lot of guns out there, a lot of barrels that have a bad point of impact. It is not the choke tube, it is the barrel. Vice versa, there are many more chokes out there than bad barrels that are bad.
Can I cut in real quick, Jamie? I hate doing that to you, but really, I need to know this for myself even. So you're talking about a bad barrel, right? Like if you're doing a point of impact. Let me ask you this. Where is the line drawn from point of impact to I need to shim the gun?
Okay, so basically, wait, ask that again, to the what of the gun?
Because we're talking about the barrel, but what if, and we're getting this deviation, okay, but at what point you're like, wait a minute, that's not a bad barrel, that's just I need to shim my gun. And maybe I'm not.
Yep.
You understand?
So that's a totally different thing. So if we bench rest a gun and we line up the beads and we aim and we squeeze the trigger, chances are you're sort of aiming the gun at a particular spot and you're shooting a few patterns on the same spot. Like I said, the point of impact may be off, but then if you put the choke in and repeat the process, it should be in the same spot. What that tells you, the only thing that tells you, is that the barrel and the choke are good. Now, getting to your point of impact where it comes to shimming and stock fit and all of that, that's an entirely different part, okay? So first we need to make sure that the barrel is shooting where it's supposed to, and then the choke tube in the barrel is shooting in the same spot. Now we know that everything's good. Now getting into gun fit. Gun fit is an entirely different thing. And gun fit, basically what that means is when we aim the gun at a particular spot and we shoot multiple shots and the point of impact hits in a known spot, it may be high, okay, which is just height of the comb under your face, okay? If it's too high, we need to drop the stock down, or we need to drop our face down to give the point of impact a lower point of impact. We could do that by changing the tilt of the stock, by changing the thickness of the shim between the top of the receiver and the top of the stock, which will drop the stock, right? Or we could have a gunsmith or a good carpenter or somebody that knows what they're doing shave material off the top of the stock so our face sits lower. And that will also drop the point of impact, okay? Same sort of thing happens when our point of impact is off to one side or the other, okay? If you're a right-handed shooter, the stock should be cast off, meaning the back of the stock should go out slightly. If you're a left-handed shooter, it should be cast on where the stock comes in the other way. So these are all things that take place with gun fitting. I'm not a gun fitter. I just know about it, okay? When it comes to gun fitting, it's very important that we all understand something that's very important. And I want to bring this up because I know a lot of people that spend tons of money getting a gun fit by a gun fitter, or they spend huge amount of monies taking that gun fitting session and then going to a custom gun stock manufacturer and picking out $5,000, Turkish burl maple and having this gorgeous stock built to the measurements that person provided them, just to find out that a few months later they cannot hit anything and they don't understand why. Well, the reason is they didn't have a consistent mount when they went to the gun fitter. So what happened was they're fitting you, even though you don't know how to mount the gun consistently. They're giving you measurements, and then you're spending a fortune going to get a custom stock made. You don't even know how to mount the gun. Okay. Now, I don't want you to think that sounds a little, I don't know what word you want to call it, but it takes a lot of practice to be able to mount a shotgun consistently. Give you an example. Back when I used to compete a lot, I would put weights on my wrists and I would mount my gun 100 times every night before bed. The reason I did that was not only so my mount would be consistent and the muzzle wasn't doing things I didn't want, but it also made sure that I wasn't having a bad gun mount, mounting and hitting my chest or getting stuck under my arm or whatever have you. It created consistency, predictability, and confidence in my gun mount. Usually we all move too fast, right? We throw the gun up, then we chase the target, then we pull a trigger, right? The thing is, the slower we move, the more time we have, and the more accurate we are. Yes, the slower we move, the more time we have, because we're going to move with the target, mount with the target, and shoot the target. If we're throwing a gun up behind the target, then we're chasing the target, and then we're trying to lead the target. That all takes way more time. So gun mount is very, very important. And if you do not have a very accurate, consistent gun mount that comes to your face and then your shoulder, and it's not spot on every time, you have no business getting a stock measurement or stock fitting, because it's going to be all over the place. So rule number one, mount your gun, mount your gun, mount your gun. Very important. And I mean all the time. I don't mean in August right before you're getting ready to go hunt teal. I mean throughout the year, at least a couple times a week, you should be mounting your gun with either a laser shot in the barrel or a mag light in the barrel, so you can see where the line in the wall meets the ceiling. You should be mounting to that point like a bayonet, moving the gun like an elevator, up and down, not like this, but mounting like an elevator to the spot that joins in that tangent spot. When you get a very consistent mount to that line, then what you need to do is you start to speed it up, move from here, mount to there, start over here, mount to there. When you start to get a really consistent mount, then you can say that, okay, now I have a good mount. Now let me get fitted. Now let's get a stock made, because now it makes sense. Okay. And I bring this up in such a strong point because there's so many people out there all over the internet. My gun isn't shooting where it should be. My gun doesn't shoot where I'm aiming. My gun doesn't shoot where I'm looking. The gun is bad. The barrel's no good. I got to tighten the barrel nut more to bring down the point of impact. No, you need the right shim between the stock and the forend, the stock and the receiver, or you need even more than what the gun provides, or you need the stock machined, or you need the stock bent, or maybe you just need to mount better. Listen.
So how do you know, Jimmy? How do you know if it's the barrel or if it does need to be shimmed? I mean, is there a quick, easy way to know?
Yep. So basically what you do is the first thing you do is you bench rest the gun like we talked about. You line up, if there's two beads on the gun, that's even easier. If there's only one bead, it's okay. Just line it up the best you can. Aim at the dot and fire a few shots, and the pattern should all hit the same spot. If the pattern is on, I'm going to use a couple different examples here because it's really important. If the pattern is on where you like it, perfect. Now you need to stand up and you need to bring the human error in with mount, with the way you squeeze the trigger, with the way you hold the gun, with the way you aim the gun, with the way you point the shotgun. Now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat the process, but we're going to stand up and we're going to mount the gun slowly, accurately. We're going to aim at the dot and we're going to fire the shot. We're going to do that 5 times again. Then we're going to go analyze it. Is our point of impact the same as it was when we were bench rested? If it is, you're good to go. If your pattern is way different than when you were bench mounted, it is the way you're mounting the gun. Okay?
Okay.
Now you need to figure out, okay, am I consistent mounting the gun? Okay, now let's throw the bench rest out.
Let me backtrack. That's with no choke in, right?
So let's assume you've already tested that.
Yeah.
Let's assume that the choke and the barrel both have the same point of impact, right? We've determined that bench resting. So now we've got the good choke in the barrel. And now all we're doing is mounting, aiming, and shooting. Mounting, aiming, and shooting, taking our time. If it's good, then we know that the gun fits us. Our mount is consistent. We're good to go. Now it's just a matter of mounting faster, mounting different ways, really trying to get our mount more consistent. Now, if we bench rested and then we free aim and free stand and we shoot and our point of impact is like all different, or our point of impact is different than bench resting, we now know that our human error is in play. Why is it in play and what is it creating? So if I'm mounting slowly, aiming and shooting, and every pattern is in the same spot, but it's not where I want it, my mount's consistent. Now I need to move the shim and the stock to get it to where I want it. Okay? If I shoot 5 shots, mounting, aiming, and shooting, and one pattern's here, one pattern's here, one's here, one's here, that's me. That's my bad mounting. That's my inconsistent mounting. Don't change anything on the gun until I can get the pattern on top of one another every shot, regardless of where it is. I don't care where it is. Make sure that they're all in the same spot. Once they are in the same spot, then we start to worry about shimming. Okay? If the shims cannot provide enough movement to get the point of impact where I want it, we need to either double the shims or we need to get maybe a custom shim made that's even thicker. You know, thicker on the side we need it, thicker on the top, drop it more, whatever we need. If somebody's not willing to make a shim like that, then we need to get into the thought process of, okay, I'll stick some plastic shim stock in between on top of the shims that come with the gun to really force it over more than what those factory shims will give me. I mean, a lot of my guns have 10,000s, 15,000s, 30,000s, 50,000s of extra plastic shim stock in between on top of the factory shims to get it to shoot where I want it. So we need to do these things. If we don't feel we're mechanically inclined enough to do that, we need to go to a gunsmith or a gun fitter that can bring us into that direction. But again, please don't do that until your mount is consistent or you're just wasting everybody's time. Most importantly, your own.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, how would you know if it was? I don't try not to beat this thing, but now, like, let's say if it really was, which is probably very rare that it's ever a bad barrel, right? It's very, very rare, I'm assuming.
Not as rare as you may think.
Really?
Especially in an over and under. So over and unders, you'll have the bottom barrel point of impact dead nuts right where it needs to be. You fire the top barrel and your point of impact 6 inches high and left. You know, and this is why I tell you to take the chokes out. So you take the margin of error out of the equation, right? So just shoot the barrels. The barrels need to be the same. So in a single barreled gun, the point of impact just could be the way the gun fits you, right? Normally,
Yep.
it's not a bad barrel on a single barrel, even though I have seen it where a barrel is actually bent because somebody dropped the gun or whatever. Or when they soldered the rib on it, it torqued the barrel. When the solder cooled, it torqued the barrel. I've seen that. But on over and unders, that happens a little too often with certain gun manufacturers where they have to solder the barrels together with the center rib, but they also have to solder the rib on top of the gun. So they've got two barrels soldered together with a rib, and then they've got on top barrel, they've got your rib that they've got to solder onto the top barrel. So you've actually got 3 points of contact for soldering. You've got 3 times where you could really screw up one of the barrels torquing.
That's tough.
Yeah. So expensive guns are not supposed to have that problem. Cheap guns, I can assure you it happens a lot. Okay.
Yeah,
you buy a $600 over and under, what do you expect to get? So you better test it because you will be surprised at how often it happens.
Yeah. Well, I know we're hitting only about 36 minutes, but I kind of think I almost want to end this there because I feel like to you is probably not as interesting. I don't know answering those, but I know I've always had those questions a lot. So I'm assuming a lot of other people have the way you dug into the barrel, how you're pulling up your gun, and then also the chokes and the proper pattern testing. And so it's just so important. It's like you said, you can't stress that stuff enough. It's really, I don't know.
I mean,
I say that some people are like, well, they're happy with how they do it, and that's fine.
yeah.
And I'm not trying to be the guy that forces it down anybody, but it's just kind of like, I guess I say this all the time is like, if you can have better, why not do it?
Yep. I mean, listen, it doesn't hurt to become better, right? So if you really care about your wing shooting or your hunting, if it matters to you a lot, the most important thing is the tool you're using to do the job. Okay. So if I'm a carpenter and I'm banging nails all day with a hammer like the old days, I'm handling that hammer every day. I could hit a nail with my eyes closed, right? Sometimes with either hand, right? What business do you have touching your gun 1 month before duck season and not touching it the rest of the year and expecting your mount to be good, your move to be good, your aim to be good? You have no business thinking that because it's not going to be. If Tiger Woods or anybody that is at the top of their game, do you think that they go the entire season and not touch their golf club and then go out and play around a golf? No, never happened. They sleep with their freaking golf club. It's always in their hand. Duck callers. You ever see them driving around with their duck call hanging from their rearview mirror? Yeah, because they're always blowing the freaking thing.
Yep.
Why?
Yep.
Because if they don't, the first day of duck season, it's going to be foreign to them. They're going to freaking hit notes they never knew existed because they haven't been doing it. So it all depends on what level you want to do things. Do you want to be a ham and egger and be a ham and egger in the blind and be happy when you hit a duck out of 50 shots? Well, then be that. Do you want to be surprised when you pull a trigger and you don't hit a duck? Well, that takes a lot more time and energy to get to that point.
Well, who likes that though? Like, there can't be one person on God's green earth for a duck hunter that likes to miss.
No.
I mean, we all do it. I do it. But what I'm saying is if I can go from a 30% shooter to a 65, 70% shooter, I mean, I'd love more than that, but I'm just throwing some number out there.
Yeah.
Why would I not do it? And like you said, you don't practice. How do you expect any less than that? And I know it's time, it's money. Like you said, our time is important. But for instance, here's a great example. My buddies are big game hunters. They're guides as well. They get hunters out there that have barely shot their rifle.
Yep.
And they're paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on a massive hunt once in a lifetime. And how irritated, they're not going to tell the customer this, but how irritated do you think they are when they've hiked their tail ends off for 8, 9, 10 days up this rocky mountain at 13,000 feet. And this guy shoots, and they do shoot a little bit beforehand, but at that point, it's kind of late in the game. This guy shoots, and you don't know where he missed. I've done that with the rifle before. And all that does, and you talked about it shooting trap, you start second guessing everything. You lose your confidence. You double your length. You start doing all these things. Oh, did I miss low? I got to aim way high. So if you shot it all the time, unless you got your scope bumped, if you shot all the time, you would be so confident and you would know what something had to have happened because I know where I shoot and where it lands. And I know I've done that in duck hunting. I have missed, and that's before I patterned my shotguns. That's before I did all these things. And I've missed when I knew when they were 20 yards and they're coming right at me.
Yep.
There is no way that I should be missing that bird 2 times. Yep. So at that point, it's like, okay, what did I mount it wrong? You know, like I didn't put the effort in doing that, or is my choke just got big old massive gaps in it?
Yeah,
it's not a good feeling.
No, so I mean, so many people I've archery, rifle, like you're saying, I have people at practice like all the time shooting targets on flat ground, right? And then they go up in a tree stand and they never shot an arrow from up in the tree stand. They're 20 feet up, 30 feet up. Some people are like insanely high. They get a buck or a doe to come in at 15 yards and they miss over the back and they don't know why. I'm like, don't you know that anything below your feet, you have to aim under? And then, of course, you got to know how much, right? Yep. This is the same thing with a shotgun. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. You need to practice to be able to understand where they shoot. And this all goes to gun fit, repeatability, consistency, and it all comes down to confidence. You know, mm-hmm. And if you put the time in, you put the effort in, listen, instead of getting out of work or having days off, months before hunting season, instead of hanging out with your buddies and drinking beer or going to a party or a picnic, how about you throw your gun and some ammo in the truck and you go to a sporting clay course and you go shoot a couple 100 targets, go practice and do it once a week. You could find time to do it. And if you can't find time to practice, well, you're going to get what you get,
Yeah. And I know we sound kind of, we're not, I know you're not, and I know I definitely not. I'm sure perception to some people will be like, man, you guys are harping on this, but we're not mean it in a bad, negative way. We're just like, we're trying to encourage, I'm actually, to be honest with you, Jimmy, I'm doing it to encourage myself to remind me like, dude, come on, Titus. Because I've been doing that for a couple of years, like you said, just throwing that gun up and in the corners and following that and keeping that line. It's like, man, when you first start doing it, it's like, wow, I can't believe how zigzaggy I am. You know, it's just the rust and stuff. And not to mention all the shooting that I've got to have under my belt. And if anybody's listening to this and wonders about the off-season practice, we did some episodes with Jimmy talking about that and how you could best the ammo and all that good stuff and what's best to practice for waterfowl season. It's so crucial. And I think we're passionate about it too, as being better. So I think it comes across as kind of like, oh, some people may look at that as abrasive. That's not what we're meaning at all. I really want to see people helped.
Yeah.
I want to do better.
Yeah. I went through a big portion of my life. I couldn't hit anything, man. Yeah. I mean, I knew how to mount a gun, hold a gun, aim a gun, meaning like a pellet gun, a rifle, a 22. I could take the sights off of any of those guns and hit a can on a bush at 40 yards every shot with no sights because I shot it every day, right? I could hit birds, like I could hit starlings with a BB gun at like 60 yards with nothing but a front sight because I knew trajectory. I knew how much to hold over it. Why? Because I shot thousands of shots a week, right? I knew what to do. And when it came to a shotgun, I couldn't hit anything, man, flying. And I'm like, what is going on? My dad's a master wing shooter. My brother's a master wing shooter. They would let me empty my gun. They would laugh at me and then they'd kill a bird. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And it came down to me getting into sporting clays and learning that from all the years of my father saying, shoot in front of it, lead it, shoot in front of it, I realized very quickly, because people would stand behind me and be like, dude, you're shooting so far in front of that target, it's not even funny. And I'm like, really? I thought I was behind it. They're like, you're 6 feet in front of that target. These targets were like 20 yards, man. And I was shooting like a fence length in front of them. I didn't know. So immediately I started cutting my lead back. And of course, that got really easy. It's harder to extend your lead out than it is to reduce your lead. Once I reduced my lead and I hit targets, the light bulb went on. And I was like, my God, this is easy, right? And then I just started, becoming better really quickly. And then when I went out to the duck blind, instead of being surprised when a duck fell, I became surprised when a duck did not fall. And that was a pretty short period of time based on the fact that I shot from 1975 until 1993 and hit very little. And I shot a lot, Titus. I hit very little. Crows, grouse, pheasant, ducks, geese, woodcock. I mean, you name it. I struggled. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's why I'm passionate.
That's what we all want. Yeah, because you've been there, done that.
Yeah, I don't want you to have to do that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Same here. Like I said, I feel like until I got a shot cam and I started really watching what I was doing, I was like, my goodness. So I adjusted from there, and it really skyrocketed my accuracy. Yeah. That being said, Jimmy, I'm not trying to act, and anybody else listening, I'm not trying to act like I'm such a great shooter. I know me and you're not even in the same boat. I'm not trying to compare myself to you, but you'll get to laugh at me and plenty, I'm sure, when we come back there.
We all laugh at each other, man. I'll be missing my shots too, believe me.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate it. Hopefully we're helping you guys, encouraging you guys, motivating you guys to do things, because we love the sport. We love it. We're passionate about it. We dream about it in the off season, and we live for it during the season. So, guys, enjoy this one, and we'll see you guys on the next one.